And so that little sliver right there is 24 billion. So that's what HHS did in contract actions in 2007, in FY 2017, about $24 billion. And about $5 billion of that went to small businesses. So I point this out to you to first show you what the landscape is. How many people do grants in here? None. How about contracts? Okay, so that is what you're fighting over, all right? So understanding that will help you understand the landscape that is HHS. So although it might seem like there is a ton of money there, and $24 billion is nothing to shake a stick at, you can see where it lies in terms of our overall piece of the pie, okay? So I'm going to go on. So the next slide I'm showing you is the competed versus non-competed. And the reason why I want to share this with you is because of that 24 billion, the majority of that, over 65%, are actually competed contracts. So this notion that the government, or more specifically, I'll talk about HHS, that's who I'm representing today, that we have procurements are wired, I think is the term that we use. It's not true. That we do have a culture and an investment in seeing that the contractors with the best solutions at the best price do win contracts for us, so that we are looking for that. So I wanted to dispel that myth. So of that $24 billion, about 66%, maybe a little bit more, was competed. Okay? So I'm going to look at our goal achievement, and so there's an error on this slide because under there where it says service disabled, veteran-owned, small business, that we were successful. Well, 2.07 was successful for us, seeing where we came from. However, we did not meet the goal, so it should be in red. And there should be some other data points to tell you how far we were actually from that goal. But these are our goals. So our achievement for FY17, SBA is locking down the data in FPDS this week at some point, I believe. So that's not this is not official, but the point still remains. We did not, as a department, meet our small business goal. I think we got closer to this number than what this number says. I think this was a slide that I pulled from something, beg your pardon, a while ago. But I think we did do better, but we did not quite hit the goal. And there could have been several reasons why we didn't meet the goal this year. This is our first year since all the historical data that I've looked at in a long while that HHS did not meet or exceed its goals. The uptick in the need for vaccinations, for example, could be a reason. A lot of the vaccination programs go to large businesses. The disaster and relief programs from last year, if you guys remember, especially towards the end of last year, you know, where we were with all of the emergency areas in terms of hurricanes, this, that, and the other, where we did a lot of emergency contracting at the last minute. And I think that there's a lot of education that can be done around that piece, because there are laws in place, there are regulations in place that allow us to engage in streamlined contracting to small businesses in disaster areas. So I think that's an opportunity there. But nevertheless, you know, we'll have to evaluate why we did not meet our goals there. This is where we were in terms of what the goal that was set by the Small Business Administration was for HHS, and where our achievement was today. It's not the official, but I wanted to share that with you as well. But when you look at this, so if you are a small business, and then for your 1102s out there as well, you know, I care about small businesses across the board, not just at the Department of Health and Human Services. One of the things that is helpful for us when we meet our goal. You know, we get credit in all the categories that a firm participates in. So one of the strategies that we are starting to look at is, as you see, we exceed our goals in terms of the SDB and the women-owned small businesses. But in addition to that, to look at women-owned small businesses, for example, that are in hub zone areas as well. Not to say that if you went to a CO or someone in program and saying, we're a women-owned small business, oh, by the way, we happen to be a hub zone, so give us a contract that's going to work for you. That definitely, after you give your talk about your capabilities and your solutions and how they can help the program office, that you can say, oh, and by the way, we have this here. And so, so think about that as you are going out and competing for your business, or as you're awarding contracts in your agencies. Some of you may know, some others may not. And for those of you who are feds in here, I don't know where you're from, but at HHS, let's talk about HHS. Let's talk about HHS. At HHS, we have a propensity to use the GSA federal supply schedules. Okay? And one of the trends that we see is that when we go to the federal supply schedule, that pie on the left, that tells us the large versus small breakout on the federal supply schedule. Okay? And as you see, large businesses get a big chunk of the money when HHS goes to the federal supply schedule. Why am I telling you this? Why do you care? Because to the right, what we've done here for you is to show you, out of those large businesses, out of those awards, if you look at those industries to the right, you will see that most of those awards, over 30% or so, I think it was 35%, I can't really remember or see, that most of those awards were in the 541 sector, okay? And this is important to know because there are a lot of small businesses in the 541 sector, all right? And more specifically, and 541-611 was a top hitter. And so when we look at the thousands of small businesses that are there, you know, and if you yourself, if that's one of your primary NAICS, looking for opportunities in these areas that were once large to flip them to small businesses, to flip them to small business competitive procurement, we would like to help you with that. And a lot of times you guys know in industry things more than we do or before we do. You have more resources than we do a lot of times, and you know, you have PD folks and all that. So if you let us know, hey, there's this procurement that it was large, think we can flip it to small. There's no order of precedence in terms of hub zone over women-owned. You have to look hub zone first, you have to look there. We don't have that in the government. And so one of the things that I encourage folks to do is, and then for our 1102s in the room, you guys are a lot smarter than me. I did spend a lot of time in operational contracting, and so what I have forgotten a lot. But that's okay, because we have very capable people like yourselves, that we can, you can say, come together with other small businesses and say, hey, let's get this set aside for a hub zone or for service disabled veteran-owned small business or women or whatever, and respond to RFIs or whatever it is to at least get it set aside. Because the next slide I'm going to show you is the SAT. So this is a 3-year trend for the simplified acquisition threshold purchases at HHS. And I'm tying these two together because one of the things that you'll see, and my contract folks help me out, I believe it's FAR 19502, which tells us that if it's under the SAT, then we are supposed to set aside the procurement to small business, right? Unless the CO says that I'm not going to have 2 or more responsible small business to respond, right? Did I get that right, guys? Something like that? All right? So that's what it is. But we see from looking at this data right here that something is happening. And I believe that part of what's happening, why we're not getting a lot of this stuff under the SAT that we can or should be getting, is because there are some postings that are happening that small businesses are not responding to. So I just want to take this opportunity to share with you all the impact that, and I know there's going to be conversations about RFIs, there's been conversations about it earlier today and how to be creative around them and all of this. But this is what happens, that you have 49% of the awards under the SAT going to small business. Does that surprise anyone? So I said, no, not me. Well, and the other thing that this data shows me is that we're going in the wrong direction. All right? And so I'm always willing to have conversations on some of the things that we can do to fix this, because I can tell you that, you know, the COs face a lot of stressors, pressures from people of who to award contracts with, and they want to do their due diligence, and they did their part. But the small businesses need to do their part as well and respond, okay? So because ACT-IACT is largely IT related, I wanted to share with you some trends in terms of the GWAC usage. As they were introducing me, they were talking to you about my history prior to coming to the HHS Osgobu, and I spent quite a bit of time in the NITAC program. And this is actually how I became introduced to ACT-IACT some years ago. But if you see the trend here for HHS GWAC usage, the large business piece of the pie is in red, the small business is in blue. And if you look at this, what you'll see is that we're headed in the wrong direction. Even with GWACs that are set aside to small business, like CIOSP3 small business or Alliance small business and all that, after a couple of years, or after some of these firms have to re-represent and they're no longer small, and they're still on the vehicles, what we are finding is that we have COs that are still awarding to the large business, even on small business GWACs. Okay? This data is available for everybody. So as we do an exercise in HHS every year called the SB stat, and we drill down into everything, how many awards to small business were due to being a small business set aside, as opposed to full and open competition. What's the trend in terms of GSA? Are you using strategic sourcing vehicles and all of this? We do these type of deep data dives for each. We call them octaves, operating divisions, and staff divisions. Some people call them agencies or components like NIH, CDC, CMS, FDA, on and on and on, ARC, SAMHSA. We do this data dive, which is about 50 pages long, for each and every component within HHS. And so as we go around this time of year, tomorrow I'll be in Atlanta at the CDC, talking about their small business programs there and opportunities for improvement. These are some of the things that we talk to them about. And so if you are on these vehicles, I saw a couple of hands go up about Alliant earlier this morning. As you're using these vehicles, you know, look at the opportunities to use small business when you're going to small business vehicles. And a lot of these vehicles have basically the same statement of work. So You know, if you choose to, you know, go to the vehicle, you know, you can look at the small business counterpart. I think that would be very helpful. Okay. So let's just talk a little bit about the HHS Usage, I'll call it service system. So we have a couple of systems that we use. We have the SBRS, which is our small business review system. This is the system that we use that has fully automated the small business review process. Feds in the room know what I'm talking about. Industry doesn't care. You just want to know when it hits the street. This is what everything goes to so that the small business specialist sees it, the SBA PCR reviews it, that we get our sign-offs on before we're able to post it so that you all can see it. PFDR is the Procurement Forecast Data Repository. We have two faces to the site. We have an internal and a public-facing site that speaks about procurement opportunities in the current fiscal year and beyond, and the operatives are supposed to update it. They can update it anytime they want. And SBMS, which is the Small Business Management System, this helps us to, we haven't launched this yet. We're launching it, should be any day now, but this is a tool that we're going to use to help measure our return on investment with industry as we come out and we speak to folks like we're doing today. When we have our monthly sessions, the counseling that we do when small businesses come into our office and we talk to them and we give them a heads up on procurements that we know are coming and that we would like to try to get set aside for small business. So regarding our IT systems, the SBRS, PFDR, and SBMS, I actually wrote a contract. I didn't write the contract. I had the requirement. Somebody else wrote the contract, the PSC, good folks at PSC, that we are actually rewriting those three systems and combining them into one that we're calling SBCX, the Small Business Customer Experience. This is coming soon. They're in the process of rewriting it now so that we'll have one platform, one landing page, one application for anybody who is interested in HHS Small Business Program, whether you're putting a procurement in the system for review, if you're interested in our forecast, or if you're engaging in counseling or coming to one of our events, all of that will be there as a single point of entry. We're really excited about that. We actually awarded that contract to a hub zone out of the West Coast. So the main policies, people always, you know, want to know, everything we're rooted in has to do with the Small Business Act, is available to answer a lot of questions that you have. Title 13 of the CFR and FAR Part 19. That's a lot of what those are the primary policies that guide the small business programs at HHS. We do have an internal, well not internal, we do have a departmental regulation called the HISAR, but that chapter for small business is only about a paragraph. So it's really small. And then outreach, in addition to coming out and speaking to you good folks like I am today, every second Tuesday of every month, except for the month of September, we have what's called a vendor outreach session. This is located at our headquarters office in the penthouse at 200 Independence Avenue. Registration is online on the HHS Usage website, which I don't have the address. But if you Google HHS Usage, it'll take you to our site. And you can find registration information about the VOSs, as well as our annual Getting Back to Business events. Every year during the spring and early summer, we travel around the country and we take the HHS show on the road. And these events are great. Our premier event is in June this year. It'll be in Rockville at the Natcher Center. I encourage everyone to come. It's a free event. Federal staff, you guys are welcome. Doesn't matter your agency. Please feel free to come as well. And you can hear more about the procurements at HHS. We do a lot of R&D at HHS, for example. But you get to hear from the heads of contracting activity. The senior procurement executive will be there, who's also the deputy assistant secretary for OGAPO, who's actually also the acting director for the OSNABU program. So you'll hear all three of her talk in one. And then we have folks from the program offices from the different agencies will be there. Representatives for the SBA will be there if your business is new and up and coming. We'll have matchmaking at in the afternoon. And one of the things that we did different last year at our DC event was we did what we called an idle style industry pitch. And what we did was we had small businesses do a 10-minute pitch in front of government officials and the top 10 large HHS contractors to come in, and they listened to the pitches and they gave feedback to the small businesses on their pitches. And so it was really exciting. We did it in 3 areas. We did it in R&D, IT, and professional services, because again, you can see that a bulk of our work is done in that 541 sector, which is where the professional services are. And this year, one of the things I was just talking to my team about was that the industry pitch was all well and good, but one of the things that we're shooting to have is program offices with actual procurement that they're looking to recompete in 19 or 20 or beyond, that they're starting the acquisition planning on now, that we want them to come and meet with folks in industry around their solutions, around their procurement. So we're really doing all that we can, and hopefully you guys can give us some ideas on how we can further improve what we're doing. But putting together the government that has a real requirement when we speak to industry, because a lot of the times it's just, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Here's my case statement, great, and nothing happens. So we're trying to just not have that. We want to have actual procurements when we're meeting with you guys and really striving for that. And our vendor outreach sessions and our B2B events when we're meeting and doing the matchmaking and matching people up accordingly. So with that being said, I think I'm done. Oh, these are the small business specialists in the OSNABU office. If you have any problems reaching any of them, let me know. Small businesses, we believe that small businesses are the heart of the economy. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I don't need a mic. Within our agency, there's a big push to use best-in-class vehicles.
Understood.
Best-in-class vehicles and shared services. And I was wondering if that's impacting your small business numbers at NIH and at HHS.
Okay.
And is that a big push within your agency?
Right. So yes. Okay. And yes. Okay. But we don't know the impact that it's having yet. But you know, you can see these things coming with same thing that happened with strategic sourcing and all of that. That you know, when you force, you know, all of a sudden you force the contracting officers to go to certain vehicles, certain BPAs, and all there are large businesses there. Of course, that's going to impact what we're doing. We have an effort at HHS right now called Reimagine HHS. And so, as many of you probably know, we have a new secretary that is working with the department on this new this Reimagine HHS, and category management is a part of all of that. And so all of that is yet to be seen. So, you know, I'm going to stay tuned just as you are. But I do know that there is talk that if CLs can demonstrate that using the vehicles would cause harm to small business, then there are justifications that they can put in their file for not going in that direction. I know I've been reading about that lately. So I don't know exactly what has been put in place in terms of regs that support that yet, but I have heard that discussion.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, do you have recertification of sizes within your small business contracts at each performance period? Your options?
Question one more time. Are you talking about for OSMU contracts or?
Right, in your small business contracts, contracts that HHS might have that are awarded to small businesses, do you have mandatory recertifications at each performance period for the options exercise?
Right. So with so I can tell you this, that HHS is pretty big, okay, and each optive or staftive within HHS, some are bigger than others, and so each of them have their own contracting universe. So, you know, one of the results of that is a different approach to contracts. So, speaking in terms of anything that does not, if it's not in the FAR, and we abide by the FAR, okay? That we do have in common, and the areas of the HISAR that are applicable. Other than that, if the FAR is silent, or if there are more innovative ways of doing contracting, that's what the different areas do. Yes. Any other questions? Okay. With that being said, thank you very much and very much.
Thank you, Dr. Street. So what we want to do now is start to get more of industry's perspective on this whole procurement process. So without further ado, I want to introduce our next panel. So it's really about, in order to frame the discussion, we gave it kind of the title of, what's the government thinking? So our moderator, Kim Pack from Wolfden Associates, will walk us through and dig into a little bit into items such as like, you know, what's this interpretation of language? What do they mean when they said this? And it really just boils down to the dark art of trying to read someone else's mind. So with that, I look forward to the insight that the panel is going to give. Kim?
Good afternoon, everyone. So nice to see all the smiling faces out there. This is going to be exciting. First, thank you, Wilt. I really appreciate it. I'm a little short to be standing behind a podium, a little vertically challenged, and so I'm probably going to sit down once we start to do the discussion, but first I really wanted to open to let you guys know that what we want to bring today is really the perspective of industry from small business, mid-size, and large. It's important to us because we look at the solicitations, RFIs differently, and we wanted you to see each of our perspectives. So you will see on this panel, we have a good representation of all three. And with that, what we're really going to do is we're going to really go into how do we read solicitation requirements, how do we interpret them, what are the reasons we won't bid an RFQ or solicitation that's coming out. And the other thing is we really want to dive into why RFIs are so important to us and what we get from those. And so with that, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to start with Lindsay. Let her introduce herself and give just a couple of quick remarks. We'll go down the panel, and then we'll start with questions.
Thank you so much. So hi everyone, I'm happy to be here this afternoon. So I've been in the federal business development world for about 10 years now. So I started my company, New Access Innovations, when we were about 40 people strong in one contract, and we are now about 500 people and 40 plus contracts. So we've had some significant growth over the years. So I now serve as the Director of Business Development for New Access, so I oversee essentially the opportunity identification through to post-submittal activities, so kind of the entire gamut of business development. So managing business development in a small business environment. So when I started, we were a small 8A and then moved to a small business and then what we call a large small, and now a mid-sized company has kind of given me a unique perspective of how business development is treated differently at each stage of growth, because it is very different, our resources and how we prioritize and how we interact with the government. So I look forward to sharing your experiences today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Helene?
Hi everyone, my name is Helene Johnson. I'm the president of Bid to Win Consulting. I've been in this field for 38 years, so I feel kind of old now. My background is from the large businesses through to the small. I was also a deputy CIO in the government for a short period. And my company, we specialize in capture management. So we are the strategists on how, at this time, small to mid-sized companies go into the government market, how they expand their business, how they focus, and we find opportunities for them, and then we capture them, or we go after them and we win them. So I'm happy to be here as well.
Thanks, Helene. Mike?
Good afternoon. I'm Mike McHugh from General Dynamics Information Technology. We're a large business. We're about to get bigger, as you're being heard in the news. And I'm the staff vice president for GSA and GWAC programs. So my office, we manage and or support the operation of about 65 IDIQs. That team reviews and posts for internal distribution and review every RFI and every RFP that comes out of those contracts. And we assist people with compliance. We assist people in getting work to those contracts. We do red teams and we occasionally help with proposals, especially IDIQs because we have a lot of practice with that. I'll talk more about RFIs and what we do there, but I would like to say that we used to manage or support the management of about 85 IDIQs, and in the last 2 years, a lot of them didn't get repeated for very, very, very good reasons. And the government, I think, is getting more efficient with their IDIQs and not proliferating them to the extent that they don't need. I think that's good for everybody. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks. Jeff?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Shen with Red Team Consulting. It seems like every time I do a panel, it's like an hour after lunch. So hopefully now food has settled in and everyone's just going to be lulled to sleep. So that's perfect. But I'm one of the owners of a company called Red Team Consulting. And essentially what my company does, what we do, is we help other companies win government contracts. I've been in business now, the company's been in business for 14 years. I've been doing federal contracting for over 20. You know, as a company, we get to see almost everything that's out there because we work several hundred proposals a year across DoD and civilian. So we see lots of different nuances between big RFPs, small RFPs, task orders, IDIQs, DoD, civilian, and intel, state and local. So some of what I'll be sharing today is just tidbits from our experience in supporting the proposal side of working with companies.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So as you see, we have an amazing amount of experience on this panel. And so what I'd like to do now is have a discussion with the panel. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the areas of RFIs, RFQs, the solicitation requirements, the language, interpretation, all kinds of fun things, right? And so we are going to open this discussion up with you and open up for questions in just a little while. So if you think of something, write it down. We're happy to answer it at the end of the session. So with that, let me go ahead and open it up, and I'm going to go ahead and start with Mike. I kind of pick you in the middle, go randomly. But really, what are the aspects of a really effective solicitation? When you're looking at a solicitation, just give me a couple. We'll go down the groups, but what are your priorities there?
Well, first of all, thanks for asking me first because I can get the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
I'd say 3 things right off the top. First of all, early engagement. So letting industry know as early as possible the nature of your requirement to the extent that you can, the most extent that you can. That's going to, I think, ensure you get more bids and better bids. Second thing I'd say is successive engagement. So not just a one-time getting your feedback, here's a solicitation. But I've seen big successes with big and complex solicitations where it's iterative and there's chances for multiple chances for feedback and for government industry communication. when the government asks specifically, how do we do this better? How do we ensure that we can distinguish between offerers, for example? And you get more meaningful feedback that way. But the more iterations I hit, the better solicitation you have at the end, and then the better delivery you're going to have at the end, and that ultimately is what matters. And the third thing I would say is minimalism. And this is an art. It's not easily done. It's easy for me to stay up here, sit up here and say this. But I think you should strive to never ask for more than you need to make that distinction between qualified offerers. Never ask for too much. Never ask for more than you absolutely need. But make sure you get enough so that you don't default to LPTA, that you really can, on something other than price, make a distinction between vendors.
Excellent, thanks.
So just to recap, early engagement, success engagement, and minimalism.
Perfect, thanks. Lindsay, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so all wonderful points and totally agree. I think where we've seen the most success are RFPs that really frame the customer's challenge, especially from a small business perspective. So you hear these buzzwords in capture like pain points, hot buttons, things like that. And based on our resources, sometimes that's guesswork for smalls. You know, if you don't know that RFP stage, you know, the saying is that you're too late to the game. So when that has been presented, it allows us to really solution well, takes the guesswork out of it, and ultimately provides a better solution to our customers. And the second thing is data. So a lot of times when we're building a solution, the PWS is quite comprehensive, but we're lacking any kind of historical data or metrics. And usually that may come out in the Q&A, but there's quite a delay in that process. So providing any, for example, help desk. We work a lot in service desk and help desk. So when ticket volumes, things like that are attached in the RFP, we're able to right off the bat solution and really understand your environment to provide you know, our best offer.
Excellent, thanks. Jeff?
So I'm going to go a little bit more tactical in my response, you know, because we look at RFPs, maybe the same way you look at proposals, right? There's a good, bad, and ugly. You know, very rarely does a proposal probably bring a tear to your eye because it's that good, right? We kind of feel the same way about RFP, right? Everybody's picky about what they see. So just some tactical things we notice is, and really Mike's point is, you have to go simple. One common thing you may have heard from industry is, you know, why does a statement of work have to be 50 to 100 pages? Or if it's that long, why give industry 20 pages and then say address the entire statement of work of PWS and the PWS is 50 pages? Do we really need to address everything? Or is it just a snippet, which is of the most critical nature to your agency that we could address? Well, now we can address that within 20 pages. You know, also, again, being a little bit more detailed here, in the instructions, you know, oftentimes you'll incorporate elements in the PWS, in the instructions themselves, and then refer back to the PWS. So let me give you an example. Let's say it's a cloud RFP. You might say we're looking for a vendor for you to respond with your cloud experience, doing integration, migration, deployment, and have key personnel. Oh, by the way, write a whole, you know, statement of work or response to the statement of work. Now, industry's thinking, oh my gosh, how does the outline look? Do they want separate breakouts or the integration, migration, and then we have to incorporate that as headings and subheadings? We debate this for days sometimes, but you really didn't intend that, but now we're interpreting it as such. So just be very specific and be clear and concise in terms of how you're asking for companies to address to the RFP.
Helene, not last, I mean, you are last, but not least for sure. You know, how about you? You do this for a living as well. You look at these all the time. What are a couple things that stand out?
Well, what stands out is that we've seen this before, way before the RFP hits. You know, again, I focus on capture and strategy. We're going to go out a year and a half before an RFP has been in the street, and we're going to start working this. So the early communications and the early opportunity and often opportunity for us to provide feedback, so that when that RFP hits, it's no surprise to us. I agree with my colleagues. When it hits, we have to answer the mail, but we need to understand whether we should bid, whether we can win, and why you should choose us over anybody else. And the only way to do that is to have early communication and the opportunity to see artifacts, to have the opportunity to come see you, industry days, visits, because if we don't have that, you're not even going to get a qualified bid. You're going to get something that we just put together on paper just to be able to take a shot at it. So I guess I'm focused on early and often communication and as much artifacts as possible way before your RFP comes out, so then when your RFP comes out, there's no surprises, and we're ready to respond in a qualified bid.
So as you see, you've already heard the words early and often from 3 different panelists in the first question. We're just hoping it sticks. You'll probably hear it many, many more times throughout this conversation, but it is very important to us. And when we do our takeaways at the end, you'll find that that is one of the most critical things industry is looking for, is that early and often communication to make sure that we can actually respond to something that we are ready for. And that's something that we want you guys to take away. With that, Colleen, I'd like to start with you this time. You're first, in my heart. How important to industry is sections C, L, and M, or the SOW, L, and M? Those are important, and how early do you want to see those?
I want to see them a year and a half before the RFP. They are very important to us from many aspects. Section C, you tell us what we really want to buy. I would say the biggest problem that industry has is we think that you want to buy our product. Well, we don't even know what you want to buy, but we want to shove it into what you think you need. So the earliest that we see Section C, we can see that in RFI. We can FOIA and see it in your old RFP, but we don't know if it's going to change at all. So the earliest that we can see in your either your source of SAW, or your RFIs, or your industry days, or however you want to give it to us, the better, because then we know whether we really have a solution for you. The other reason that we want to see it early and often is because it helps us know whether we even have something that we need. And it really does save time for industry as well. We won't come visit you and take up your time giving you something that we don't even have available to you. So the earliest the better. L and M is very helpful. L, for my colleagues who do proposals, and we need to know, well, what are you going to want? How do you want us to present it? If it's orals and very small proposal, that's great. Let us know. Because that way we'll, it's not, I think the earlier gentleman was saying that orals is great because you see the people that actually do the work, and it's less expensive. No, it's not. Orals is expensive for industry because we have to hire an orals coach. We have to tell our people how to walk and talk and what to wear and how to speak. What you see when they get in front of you is not, we just take a bunch of engineers and put a tie on them and shove them in front of you. No, we're coaching those people. We're training those people. We have to, I coach orals as well. I know you do too, Jeff. And I mean, it's a lot of work, and really, it's tough on them emotionally because you tell them all their faults, and it's a very psychological, difficult thing. But if you tell us that you're going to do orals, then we're not going to spend all that time getting writers and taking them off of their billable work and putting together things that you'll never need. If you're going to want a 50-page proposal versus a 20-page proposal, tell us. As early as you can tell us that, even at least in a draft RFP. Not setting in a draft RFP is hard on everyone. And the last one is Section M, evaluation factors. Everybody did the next stuff. So you got it right. Okay. Section M is very important. We need to know not only what do you want to buy, but how are you going to evaluate us? I mean, are you looking for the cheapest price? I think you mentioned LPTA, because if you are, most of us will stand down because we won't be able to make any money if we win, or we'll lose our shirts. Tell us what you're evaluating on. Is past performance more important than technical experience? Are you really more interested in the management plan? The earlier that you tell us that, the better, because that's how we're going to spend our time. Industry's going to spend their time focusing on what's important to you. If a management plan isn't important to you, as much as making sure that you get technically what you're asking for, then great. We will focus more on the technical side and making sure that we get the most senior engineers instead of drawing you pretty org charts and stakeholder analysis plans. So the earlier we get it, the better.
Mike, I'm actually going to twist the question a little for you.
No.
Sorry.
I'm unprepared.
So Mike and I sat on the ACT-IAC Alliant 2 subcommittee, and from that perspective, we had a lot of really good discussions, a lot of good communication with GSA. How important were those 2 drafts before the RFP actually came out?
I would say they were critical. It's one of the best examples in my 16 years of doing this, doing the acquisition side. This was a huge solicitation. Line two is the GWAC. Everybody wants to be on it, especially if you're our size, but there's a line of small business as well. So not only did they issue it once, I think it was twice, maybe a third time, they kept coming back to industry and saying, ask us your questions, and they got everybody's questions. They also had some finesse in understanding who's already done work with GSA on government-wide contracts before too. So they knew how to filter some of the questions. Some of the questions, they answered them all. And I think, were there thousands? I mean, there was at least hundreds. Then they went and gave us all the opportunity to fly out to San Diego and sit down with them in their really cool conference room that overlooks the bay and the Navy base, and gave us a one-on-one session. And this took them months, but they did it. And I think they're going to be happy with the results too. I think they got a better solicitation. I think they're probably going to have if I can say this, an easier time getting protests dismissed. I think it'll be up and running pretty soon, in fact. That's my speculation. But I think it was priceless. One more thing on CL&M, if I can. One of my favorite acquisition shops, and I'm trying not to name anybody here, they don't issue L&M, and I think they should, and I don't know why they don't. Because L&M is where you can ask for advice to industry, from industry. What do you think about the way we're evaluating? We want to accomplish X. Is this the right way to go about it? Are we evaluating the right things? Are we using the right metrics? Those are critical questions to the success of your solicitation and delivery. And as for C, the task force level for getting down the IQ level, if you come out with pretty detailed requirements, that's one way to counter the problem that an earlier speaker mentioned about getting too many people coming in to see you. If they can tell early on the breadth, the depth, and the requirements, they're probably going to start to self-select and say, that's not really going to be worth our time. That's not really for us. If it's vague, you're going to get a lot more interest because there's a lot more questions. People don't know if it's a fit for them or not. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great, thank you.